Country music legend Hank Williams Jr. has endured many hardships. After a heartbreaking tragedy devastated them, the iconic musician, known for his distinctive voice and wild lifestyle, urged fans to pray for his family. Hank has overcome near-fatal falls and addiction to remain a resilient music business figure. Despite his long career and stern demeanor, these moments remind us that even the most vital need assistance. Fans worldwide are rallying behind him as he faces his latest personal tragedy, reflecting on his spectacular highs and tragic lows. From chart-topping singles to personal tragedies, Hank Williams Jr.'s life has shown the resilience of the human spirit. Join us as we examine the man behind the music, his challenges, and his legacy, song by song. Loving music at an early age. Hank Williams' love for music started at a very early age, despite the challenging environment he was raised in. He was lucky to have a good teacher, Rufus Teapot Payne, an African-American blues musician. Payne taught Hank in exchange for food or money. According to all accounts, he was influential in training his little pupil. It is possible to detect the influence of Rufus in almost all of Williams' songs that were composed later in his career. Hank Williams' success solidified his status as a critical character in the music history of the United States, even though his teacher passed away in obscurity and poverty. A total of 35 songs made it into the top 10 of the Billboard Country and Western charts during his extended career, with 11 of those songs reaching the number 1 slot. Not a fan of school. However, even though they were living in poverty, Hank Williams' parents did everything in their ability to make sure that their son got an education. However, when he was younger, Hank Williams did not show much interest in studying. They were shocked when Hank decided to forsake his studies to pursue a music career instead. On the other hand, he was fortunate enough to succeed in his undertakings and never had to experience regret for the decision he made. Williams came from a family that was a lower socioeconomic level and had a low income. His mother maintained a small guest house throughout his boyhood, while his father worked at a timber company. Hank's back problems, which started when he was a child and persisted throughout his life, were mostly paid for by their low wages. A feisty kid. Williams' tendency to fight started at a young age. It was not a habit he picked up as an adult. Williams's predisposition for battle begins at a young age. Williams is well known for his involvement in a fight with a gym teacher at his school when he was a child. This fight is considered one of the most famous stories concerning Williams. Williams was unable to participate in strenuous physical activities due to the problem he was having with his back. Yet his gym teacher made many efforts to get him to participate in increasingly tricky activities. Williams's family moved to Alabama, and at this time, he lost touch with Payne, the guitar teacher he had been studying with. An early start. As with many traditional musicians and artists, Hank Williams began his career early. In 1937, when he was just 13 years old, he first appeared in public for the first time. It was on a radio show broadcast on the local radio station WSFA. After that, he never turned around to gaze in the other direction. Drifting Cowboys, the first band he ever founded, was handled by his mother, who supported him. After dropping out of school, he started the band, and it was the first band he ever formed. Hank Williams was born with the name Hiram King Williams, but he finally decided to shorten it to Hank since he believed his full name was too long. And because Hiram does not transmit a feeling of country, this decision was without a doubt the most appropriate one. Luke the Drifter. Throughout his extended career, Hank Williams was known by several nicknames, including Luke the Drifter, one of the many nicknames he got. Williams's compositions did an excellent job of bringing the character to life. This was the pen name he utilized for his songs with a religious tone. Through the position of a gospel preacher, Williams could analyze many aspects of his flawed character, and it was through him that Williams could improve his character. When Williams sang under the stage name Luke the Drifter, his songs were far more melancholy and spiritual than the upbeat blues and country music he now sings. Fans of blues and country music continue to like much of the music he recorded under the name Luke, which is true even today. His first guitar. The topic of one of the most exciting mysteries surrounding him is not the legendary country musician himself, but rather the very first guitar he ever had. His mother said she bought the instrument for him, and many other individuals who reside in his town have also stated that they have made similar allegations. On the other hand, this story is yet to be shown to be true. The 1941 Martin D28, later purchased by the well-known singer Neil Young, was Williams's preferred guitar from a personal aspect. Williams acquired the guitar from Tut Taylor and then used it personally. Williams sang his well-known song Lovesick Blues on this guitar in 1949. A life of constant back pain. The tremendous pain that Hank Williams had as a result of a back condition known as spina bifida was something that he faced throughout his whole life. The condition is a birth defect that results in the spine and spinal cord not developing appropriately. As a result of the fact that this illness is a hazardous disease, the chances of survival for those who are afflicted with it are pretty low. Because of this ailment, Williams was always physically weak and could not do tasks that needed him to move heavy items. He failed to accomplish any of these things. Williams, who was an adult at the time, had surgery with the purpose of treating the ailment. Unfortunately, the treatment only contributed to making his condition even more severe. It was also a component that led to his death at an earlier age than expected. A lot of success. Williams's contributions to the country music genre is incredibly commendable since he was one of the first 3 country musicians to be inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame, together with Jimmie Rodgers and Fred Rose. This achievement is not to be taken lightly. On the other hand, he did not emerge triumphant just after his efforts. While he was still in the beginning phases of his career as a musician, he discovered success with his band, the Drifting Cowboys, which his mother managed. When he was just 13 years old, he was the one who brought the band together. However, throughout the years, the band's lineup had changed as a consequence of the departure of the original members. He was compelled to release most band members because he had to serve in the military during World War II. As a consequence of this, Williams chose to go solo since he was unable to find adequate substitutes for his position. A short stint on TV. In addition to having a successful music career, Hank Williams was also one of the pioneers in the field of television videos as a performer. On The Perry Como Show, he made his first television appearance. He was a guest on the show. Following that, he became the presenter of the music program Hey Good Lookin', during which he also performed with his band of musicians. When it came to his performance on television, there is no doubt that his competence in radio performance was helpful to him by providing him with an advantage. The fact that he got paid $15 for his first appearance on a radio show contributed to his decision to drop out of school. A kid earning his keep. Is it conceivable that we omitted to mention that Williams was getting a weekly pay of $15 when we said that his performance at the WSFA was his first source of income? If so, this would be a surprising omission. According to the conditions of his contract, he was expected to perform at the station twice a week, which was a considerable amount of time. In the 1930s, $15 was a significant amount for an adult, much less a youngster. In and of itself, this illustrates how good he was even as a child. At this point, $15 is regarded to be pocket change. While he was able to achieve financial independence and success at a young age as a consequence of his introduction into the entertainment business, he was also introduced to alcohol, which would later become a habit that he would continue to indulge in throughout his whole life. As a result of the issue being so severe, he was fired from the program in 1942. His worst enemy. During the very short time that Hank Williams lived, he would have been able to considerably improve his level of renown if he had just been able to break his bad habits. His collaboration with his hero, Roy Acuff, was even more impressive, who told him, "You've got $1 million talent, son, but a 10-cent brain." Even though his loved ones begged him to quit the habit, he was unable to do so because of the severe back problems he experienced. He failed to go through his whole life without experiencing any discomfort because of the limits of the medical technology that was accessible during his period. learning his first tune from Grandma. When Williams was still a student, the song On Top of Old Smoky was the first melody that he tried to learn how to play. His grandmother had instructed him on how to play it, which was a critical component in many of his performances throughout his career. Despite the passage of time, Williams's version of the song is still considered among the most remarkable performances he has ever given. Williams performed this song in various interpretations. However, the version that was supposed to be the best was the one he recorded for an advertisement for a flower company called Mother's Greatest Flower. It was a sponsored radio broadcast that ran for 15 minutes and sat in the archives for more than half a century until it was ultimately made accessible to the public in the year 2010. He even earned a posthumous Grammy nomination after making the cover accessible to the general audience. A fairy tale romance. When Hank Williams and Audrey Shepard were attending a medicine show in Banks, Alabama in 1943, they started to stumble into each other by chance. This event marked the beginning of their relationship. After meeting one another, they were able to create a romantic relationship in a relatively short amount of time. Hank was taking a break from music for the time being because his band members were being recruited into the military during World War II, and this was nothing short of a miraculous intervention considering the circumstances. Audrey went so far as to move in with him permanently so that she could accommodate his requirements and offer assistance with his band. Almost soon after that, in 1944, they tied the knot, but the marriage was annulled because Shepard was going through a painful divorce from her previous husband at the time. Heartbreaking incident. Hank Williams Jr. openly requested prayers for his family after a horrific event left them grieving. That week in 2020, the country music superstar grieved his beloved Aunt Loretta Fleming and his youngest daughter, Catherine Katie. The Williams family suffered emotionally throughout this double catastrophe. Hank, known for his fortitude, relied on his fans and family throughout that painful chapter, emphasizing the significance of community and solidarity in the face of such tragedy. His biggest personal accomplishment. From the start of his career, Hank Williams aimed to sing at the Grand Old Opry, widely regarded as the most prominent venue for country music. Williams fulfilled the requirements for the coveted chance to appear on the stage of the Opry, which was reserved for only the most talented and well-known country and blues musicians. Williams was able to take advantage of this opportunity. However, because he had problems, he was not accepted the first time he applied, and as a result, he was disqualified. They eventually got more forgiving and permitted him to perform regularly. Williams demonstrated that he was worthy of the trust that was put in him by giving remarkable live performances night after night to an audience that roared. On one occasion, it has been said that he performed 6 encores of the same song because the audience was yelling so loudly for him to continue playing. A hardworking man. Even though Hank Williams only lived for a short period, he was able to write and perform an immense amount of songs during his career. Around the time that he was at the pinnacle of his career, which lasted for 5 years, he recorded 25 songs. More than half of the songs were written and produced by him. In particular, the final 2 years of his life were when he reached the highest point of recognition in both his personal and professional life. Even though he was dealing with an alcohol addiction, he managed to do all of this, which is even more astounding. If he had been born healthy, one can only speculate about how much more he may have contributed to the country music genre and American music in general. A lifetime Republican. Hank Williams was a registered Republican who never wavered from his commitment to that political affiliation. On the other hand, even though his back condition left him unfit for military duty and stopped him from being enlisted into the war, it did not make him any less of a patriot. Before he passed away, Williams provided Dwight D. Eisenhower with substantial support, and he even went so far as to send him a birthday card. Regrettably, he died suddenly 19 days before Eisenhower's election victory, which would have given him a great deal of peace and happiness. His son is expected to have the same political position as his father. A sign of things to come. Just before he passed away, Hank Williams suddenly dropped into oblivion, which occurred after he had reached the zenith of celebrity. Because Audrey was his manager and he had to fight tooth and nail in a field that males have historically controlled to keep his career alive, the fact that he divorced Audrey, with whom he had been in a relationship for 10 years, was the first indication of what was to come. Williams was compelled to play in seedy bars in Texas and Louisiana. This was because he had been prohibited from performing as a musician. His excessive, lousy habits, which would not only make him unable to work his shows, but also lead to violent outbursts, were the most crucial difficulty that most of those who interacted with him had had with him. Williams was a well-known bar brawler because he often broke his guitars while fighting, even though he was a frail little guy. This was the reason for his notoriety. The fallen star. The situation was nothing short of a complete and utter catastrophe during Williams's last year. Approximately around this period, he started to acquire an addiction to morphine and other drugs. His producer, Fred Rose, was one who ultimately decided to stop working with him, which was the last blow to his professional career. Following the discovery of Williams's death, the authorities found out that his so-called physician, Horace Toby Marshall, had been giving him potentially lethal drugs such as amphetamines, seconal, chlorohydrate, and morphine. Each of these drugs had a role in the deterioration of Williams's heart condition during the last year of his life. An untimely death. Hank Williams passed away suddenly at the age of 29 from heart failure, which he had been suffering from for a considerable amount of time. Even though it had a detrimental effect on his prospects of living a long life, it turned out that his back condition, which had been present for a very long time, was not the cause of his death. On the other hand, it was eventually found that the mix of alcohol and improper medication brought on an unpleasant reaction. His death occurred when he was going to a show, and he was riding in his tour van at the time of his passing. At the time of his passing, Williams was only a father to one child, a boy, as stated in the official papers. Nevertheless, it was not until many years after his death that it was revealed that he had a daughter with Bobby Jett, a singer with whom he had a brief connection during the period between his first and second marriages. It was not until Jett attained the age of majority that she was informed of her father's identity. Let us have a conversation on how to live a life that is not just short, but also full of exciting experiences. A lot of vices. It was almost as if Hank Williams's bad habits, which he had established throughout his life, suddenly came back to haunt him. He had developed these habits throughout his lifetime. During his last few days, before he passed away, he had been engaged in one of the numerous altercations that he had had at the bar, which led to his suffering quite serious injuries. It was not just the severe weather that he would have to endure on his way to the concert that he was scheduled to play at on New Year's Eve in 1953, but the frigid temperatures also made his injuries much more devastating. When he was last seen alive, his chauffeur inquired whether he wanted something to eat, and he answered by saying that he did not desire anything to eat. This was the very last official discussion he ever had in his whole life, and it took place almost immediately after his corpse was found in the back of the automobile. It was determined, after further research, that at the time of his passing, he was under the influence of both alcohol and morphine, which led to the development of heart failure. A whole lot of love. When Hank Williams was alive, he was considered a gentleman even though he was alive for a very short period. Williams is claimed to have had sexual experiences with a number of his female admirers while he was on tour, even though he remained married to Audrey Shepard for a decade until the time of his death. One of the primary reasons why his wife finally left him without offering any explanation was because of this, in addition to the fact that he was addicted to morphine and alcohol. His second marriage to Billie Jean Jones occurred in 1952, shortly after he divorced his first wife. The fact that he would pass away not too much longer after the wedding meant that their marriage would not survive for very long. The court made a decision that their marriage was unlawful, and it was pronounced to be illegal when it was discovered that Billie still had 11 days remaining for her divorce to be completed. This choice was made after Billie and Hank were married and brought to light. A legacy that has been lost. Over time, a significant portion of Williams's work was lost, and it wasn't until 2006 that it began to be rediscovered to its original form. The work of Williams needed to be preserved. At some point during that year, a janitor at Sony discovered a few of his lyrics that had been abandoned in a garbage collection. These songs had yet to be completed. On the other hand, the fact that the janitor himself was a significant fan of blues and country music was a fortunate turn of events for those who enjoyed listening to music of specific genres. He should have spent more time presenting the manuscripts to the Honky Tonk Hall of Fame. He did this without any deliberation. As the basis for the accusations against him, the janitor was first accused of stealing. However, once he reported the incident to the appropriate authorities, the charges brought against him were quickly dismissed. Several well-known musicians, including Bob Dylan, collaborated to produce an album titled The Lost Notebooks of Hank Williams. This record was released after a few years had gone by. The album was constructed on the foundation of Williams's unfinished writings, which he had previously done. His legacy in Hollywood movies. Hank Williams' life and career will be immortalized in the film I Saw the Light, which was released in 2015 and also happens to be the title of one of his most famous songs. Hollywood decided to immortalize Hank Williams' life and work through film. In addition to being an essential figure in the culture, Hollywood included him in the film as a testament to his legacy. The fact that his Cadillac is still on display in a museum, where it continues to be a giant magnet for tourists even today, further insults the cause. The picture reviewed before achieved a different degree of success, even though this was the case. Tom Hiddleston and Elizabeth Olsen played the roles of Hank Williams and Audrey in the movie directed by Mark Abraham. He gave the picture his name. The performances that they gave were very magnificent. However, it could only bring in a small amount of money at the box office due to receiving reviews that could have been better. Hank Williams, the actor's grandson, questioned Hiddleston's acting and singing abilities. He was one of the most vocal detractors of the picture. To add insult to injury, he was one of the most vocal critics of the movie.
If you've watched the video till here, that means you've enjoyed the video. Subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the notifications bell icon